Hello, everyone. Welcome to our SAP community call today. My name is Moshe Nave from the SAP community team. And I'll start by handing it over to Ceci, who's a project manager for SAP BTP.
Thank you, Moshe. So hi, everybody. A warm welcome from my side. Thank you very much for attending this session today. As you know, we've been doing a couple of SAP community calls series related to Rise with SAP and how SAP Business Technology Platform capabilities can actually support your cloud transformation or digital transformation journey. In the previous sessions, we talked about the SAP integration suite. We've also shared the custom code migration app, where it actually helps you understand what you can take to the cloud, what you can take to S/4HANA, what you can take to SAP BTP as a side-by-side extension. And of course, if you've missed those sessions, don't worry, they are recorded. There are replays available and also wrap-up blog posts that you can check out later. But today, this call is all about how we can take you from the discovery to the implementation phase. So we actually have two experts on the call today. We have Anne-Marie Smith. She's the EMEA South lead for Rise with SAP S/4HANA Cloud. And we also have Marco Sommer, who is a product manager for the SAP Identity Cloud Identity Management Services. Now, what we're going to talk about today is give you, first of all, an intro or an overview into the SAP Activate methodology, because we all know that starting your transformation journey can be a little bit overwhelming, or there might be, you might not know exactly where to start. And at SAP, we have several recommendations and best practices that we'd like to share with you so you can understand how to reach that intelligent enterprise strategy. And then, of course, Marco will actually give you a concrete example of how SAP BTP capabilities, in this case, the Cloud Identity Services, can actually support in an end-to-end business process, taking you through the discovery phase right through the implementation of that journey. All right. And I also want to remind everybody that in the second half of the session, we're going to be answering questions live. So please feel free to add all your questions in the Q&A tool, and then our experts will be able to hand those at the end. If there are any questions that we can't answer live today because of time issues, then I will be including them in my wrap-up blog post, so you can check those out later. And remember, the engagement doesn't stop here. It's not just with this session. You can use the various different tags on the SAP community to reach out to the experts at any time. So for example, SAP Business Technology Platform, SAP Cloud Identity Services, SAP S/4HANA Cloud, all those tags are available in the SAP community. And by using them, your questions or your comments will be able to reach the right experts. All right, so that was it for my intro. So let's kick it off. Anne-Marie, I'm going to start with you. So first off, thank you very much for attending the session today and providing this overview for us. The first question that I have is, as I mentioned, when a customer wants to start implementing SAP S/4HANA, there are a lot of different things that they need to take into account. So it might be a little bit overwhelming at the beginning. Can you share a little bit about SAP Activate methodology, how that links to the intelligent enterprise, and how it really helps the customer to set forward in this journey?
Thanks, Cece, and thank you for the invite. It's nice to be here. So yeah, sure, let me share with you. So if I can first just talk about the intelligent enterprise, I know that that's been covered in some of the previous sessions as well previously. We typically have, if you look at the intelligent enterprise, your front office, your back office, and then if you've got manufacturing and supply chain, you also have that side of the business. And within that, we typically have got the 4 processes that we've got inside of S/4HANA and inside of your business. So firstly, your lead to cash, which is part of your front office, as you can see with the different departments. Then the recruit to retire and source to pay. And lastly, the design to operate. Now, for this example, and what we're going to use today, we are going to use the recruit to retire process just as an example. And if you look at the recruit to retire process, there's typically quite a lot of technology that's underlying within the recruit to retire process. So you might have S/4HANA Cloud, whether it is a public or the private cloud version. You'll have SuccessFactors, Employee Central, identity and access management, as well as some analytics. So that is our example. Now, how do you deploy this? You might have heard that you've got the recruit to retire process. You're going to roll that out within the next few weeks, or maybe 1 or 2 months. And what we typically say is go to SAP Activate. And there's a lot of roadmaps. There's a roadmap viewer that will guide you through the process, and you certainly will know exactly what to do if you follow it. So we're looking at this SAP Activate methodology. You'll see that there are a few milestones and a few important activities that I've highlighted that you will see throughout the process of a project. Now, the first phase is your discovery phase, or discover, and you'll see that this is really where you have to make the decision whether the solution will fit your business processes. And typically there would be a qualification, a discovery assessment workshop. And there we qualify. Does the solution fit? We will show you the solution. We will then, after you've decided that you really want our solution, let's say you maybe want to go to public cloud, we will start the project in the prepare phase. And after if you've used this trial system, you will get your first starter system, you will be onboarded. And during the prepare phase, typically we will do activities such as starting the project, making sure everybody's enabled, ensuring that the project scope is correct. And that's really setting up the project for success. Our explore phase is our next phase, and there's a very important activity, and that's a fit to standard analysis. Your fit to standard analysis is where you show business, this is what the system can do, and how can we change your processes to fit to the best practices that we've got in SAP. So your fit to standard workshop is very important. You will also in there, you'll also find what extensibility do I need on the BTP platform, which integration should I be looking at, and it's a very important for the technical stream to also have those workshops and make sure that they are ready for the scope that's coming. We then move into the realize phase. The realize phase is all about configuring, about the deployment, playing it back to business, making sure that they understand and they're happy with the solution. You'll also make sure that you can migrate your data, understand the data, how you will integrate it and test it within the quality system that you would have received by now. You'll also make sure that you can do your extensions. So wherever we do not necessarily have the functionality that's required by business on the platform, you will extend that. And we will continue moving into the deploy phase, which is really around the go live and making sure that we are ready for the production side of things, sure that all the end user training has been done, and then go into the run phase. And your run phase is after the go live. You will see that you get your quarterly updates, for instance, in the public cloud, and you have to absorb, see what you need for business, and then just that continuous life cycle. So that's just briefly, or a kind of an overlook on the most important milestones. Now, I do want to just show you what it looks like. So if we go in go.support.sap.com, you can see the roadmap viewers. And here you can see my favorites. So it's S/4HANA Cloud, we've got the Intelligent Enterprise, and then also the private edition. Know that there is a roadmap for your solution. And if you go into, for instance, a public cloud solution, here you can see all the activities, and you can filter it. You can decide that you want to just see what your stream should be doing, the integration stream maybe. And all the activities with a lot of accelerators is actually available. So there you go, Cece. That's my SAP Activate for you.
Perfect. That was a great intro. And definitely, I think, what we really want to make sure that our customers understand, so everybody out there understand, is that there is a plan for you. There is a plan to support you throughout this journey. So you don't have to do everything on your own. SAP, we have a lot of experience. Of course, we learn from implementations that other customers have done. And this is why we kind of divided the Activate into these different phases, because those are the most important phases in any S/4HANA, SAP S/4HANA project. So great. Thank you so much for that intro. Now, if we go back to the first part, you mentioned the discovery phase. What do we provide for the discovery phase that can actually help our customers understand the value of SAP S/4HANA and also understand if it fits into their business needs and would fit into their landscape?
Yeah, if we focus on the discovery phase is so important, especially in cloud, because like I said previously, and I just want to reiterate that you need to make sure that the solution fits fits your business processes. And remember that we have got the best practice business processes already set up in our cloud solutions. And you really just go and deploy and change it a little bit. You activate, with SAP Activate, you activate some of the content. So if we look at the discovery phase here, the most important activities that we've got is really looking at your trial system. So typically a customer will want to order the trial system, maybe play with it before they commit to the subscription contract. And the other thing is, we normally with your account executive or your GAD, there will be a team who will come to you and they will sit with you and they'll do a discovery assessment. And the discovery assessment is, we have got a tool called the DDA tool. And while we do it, we also look at the value that will be for your business. So I'm not going to necessarily spend time into the application value and scoping, although value management is it's very important throughout your life cycle. And we do have quite a focus on it while in RISE. However, the discovery assessment, typically it will be a workshop. It will be people coming on site, or maybe in these times not, it might be a remote workshop. And what we do is and you can also go and ask for access for the discovery assessment. I just want to show you what it looks like. Typically, it's an overview of all the processes that you've got within that's been selected for you. And when we go through the process, we will ask you the questions. We will say to you, look, and you can see here, do you need to integrate maybe to SuccessFactors? Will you have SAP Ariba? So it is more a technical solution discussion. And based on the questions and the answers and the processes that will fit your business, we will do a mapping for you to the best practices. And here you can see just the overview. There's also, if you do not want access to the tool, you can always go back to your SAP team on site, ask them if you can maybe see what is included, so that you can also understand from an integration or from an extension perspective what needs to be deployed. So there you go, you can see everything, and you can see the scope for each of the lines of business, as well as if there are any specific BTP use cases. Now, what we want to look at, if we for instance click on finance on the left hand side, you can see here that we have got the very specific business processes, plus then a link, and you can go straight into the Business Practices Explorer to go and have a look at what the process will look like. There will be test cases for you, the process is mapped, a lot of information, and this really helps you to see exactly what is in scope, and it's always available for you as a customer. Now, I just want to show you an example of a process. We said that for this discussion, we will focus on the intelligent recruit to retire process. So I have just got the process in front of you, and really before I hand over to Marco to just explain the process. So if we have a look at a typical recruit to retire process, it's all around planning your workforce in the beginning, and that's, as you can see, in SuccessFactors. You will then have to staff your employees, and also maybe external employees, depending on the solutions that you've got. You will onboard, and I think all of us as employees relate to this. You are onboarded into the organization. We then go into the normal working mode. So here, typically, we have got our timesheets. We have got to do skills assessments, of course, training and development, things that you and I, as a normal employee, always have to do. And then there's a paying part, and here you can see we've got SuccessFactors, Concur maybe, as well as the ERP backend, and lastly the closing, or when you offboard your resources. So that is the recruit to retire process, and I really like this slide because it actually shows you that it's not very complex, and it's something that all of us actually know. Now, if we want to go into a little bit more of a technical, detailed process view, then you can see that we have got here the process with SuccessFactors. We have got the data management side. We've got our S/4HANA Cloud, as well as then the identity management part. And these are all components that we need to take care of and look at when we are deploying the solution.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I really liked how you showed like the flow first, so the process in more layman's term, let's call it, with the actual steps, and like you said, the things that we know from our day-to-day, probably. And then we go into the technical overview where we actually see the components that SAP provides either out of the box by, for example, a closed solution like SAP SuccessFactors or SAP S/4HANA Cloud, but also where we provide BTP on top to give you those extra capabilities that you need to actually make everything work together and really have an integrated landscape. All right. So Marco, now I have a question for you. So as we were saying, we took the example of the recruit to retire process. And I think the cloud identity services have a very important role in this process because, of course, you need users and you need to be able to provision those users. You need to be able to decommission those users in the instance of a retire. So can you explain a little bit about SAP Cloud Identity Service, just a general overview, and then walk us through how you would actually implement that across your various different systems?
Sure. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks, Anne-Marie, for the overview of the process from hire to retire. And that's actually what I wanted to show in a very practical example. So let me briefly share this one here. So you should be able to see my screen right now. So what I've prepared is a little overview to have a practical insight into the hire to retire scenario. So this is actually the landscape that I've prepared for today. We actually have an S/4HANA cloud system, actually a private cloud system. We do have a SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central system in there. We have a demo application running on top of BTP so that we are able to show the single sign-on with the identity services as a very central integration component on top of BTP that ensures a seamless integration, for instance, to corporate single sign-on that is usually established at our customer side with a corporate identity provider. In the example today, I chose Microsoft Azure Active Directory in order to be able to show the integration scenario. Anne-Marie also showed the hire to retire lifecycle process, and Ceci asked for identity lifecycle management. This is something that I'm going to show at the very end. So getting a birth certificate for a user in a SuccessFactors system and provision the user with the identity provisioning service to the cloud identity service so that thereafter the user might be spread to other business applications, authorizations would need to be assigned, and then the user could access the various cloud systems that are in place, like for instance the S/4HANA cloud instance. One remark in advance for the demo so that you have a better insight. So I'm going to use Firefox for the application user who intends to access the various business applications, whereas the administrator view, I'm going to show that in Chrome. So I flip a little bit the view with the two browsers. Whenever I use Chrome, I'm more on the administrator role, and in Firefox with the application user. And now let's go into the detail how that practically looks like. So we're going to start with the management of the identity authentication service, where we are configuring a single sign-on. We have a brief look at the integrated applications that we are going to use. First of all, we have a demo application running on top of BTP. So that's a SAML integrated application that is configured here. Then we have an S4 private cloud edition on our S/4HANA on-demand landscape. One thing that we briefly check is the authentication behavior. So here we see that we don't have proxy configured. So the identity authentication service will be the authenticating IDP. So in the very first scenario, we will establish single sign-on with the identity authentication service. Last but not least, in this demo scenario for today, we have a SuccessFactors sales demo instance for a particular company. Here again, we have from conditional authentication, single sign-on will be established by the identity authentication service so that the user should have seamless single sign-on. So far not integrated with a corporate single sign-on, but just with the identity authentication service. Now, what does it look like? So we're going to start with the demo application from where I will initiate a login so that I have a session. So I'm redirected to the identity provider. I do open the login screen and provide my credentials. And then I'm successfully authenticated. I have an active session. in the demo application. This demo application in principle just displays what the identity provider sends to the application, but the data is configurable. And now I'm able to navigate further. I'm able to access my S4 system with the configuration that I have. So first factor authentication was sufficient. There's no strong authentication configured, and I'm able to access my S4 cloud system that I can use straight away. And last but not least, I have as a third system the SuccessFactors Employee Central demo environment in place, which you can also access with the active session that I have in the identity authentication service. We see here that's my user, and there was no need to authenticate once again. So this is something that I can access immediately. Let's trigger a logout here to terminate the session, close the session, and we go back to the overview. Now I'm going to change a particular setting. What we've seen so far is a single sign-on to the 3 business applications with an active session in identity authentication service itself. What I'm going to do now, I flip authentication and will enforce to provide credentials in Azure AD. For that, I'm going to change the authentication method for the S/4HANA system and will redirect my user to Azure Active Directory. For that, I'm going to change the conditional authentication. It would in principle be possible to configure rules to send some users to Azure AD, some users authenticate in identity authentication, and other users sent to another identity provider. Here, I'm going to change the default behavior. So now all users will be redirected to Azure AD to provide their credentials. So now I should see a different authentication behavior when accessing the demo application. Let's briefly get a And now I'm going to access the S4 system straight away, for which the authentication behavior was changed. So now I still have an active session since there was let me briefly check. There still was a browser window open. Now it's all gone. There should be no session anymore. And now I'm supposed to be able to access the S4 system with the credentials that I have in Azure Active Directory. So providing the credentials will take me to the Azure AD instance of my company. Here I was authenticated with my client certificate. That was actually my business user, so with an X509 certificate. And I can see that I have authenticated with the credentials in Azure Active Directory and still have access in the same way as if I would have locally authenticated with identity authentication in Azure AD. Let's briefly check how that looked like. So we have, from the overview perspective now, changed the configuration here so that when accessing the S4 system, we had a redirect based on the security assertion markup language protocol to the identity authentication service. Thereafter, IAS detected that it's configured to redirect the user to the corporate identity provider, namely Microsoft Azure AD, where I had to provide my credentials, and if they were valid, I received an active session in the respective S4 system. Okay, so now I'm going to change the behavior again, because for critical business applications, it is often important to enforce stronger means of authentication, two-factor authentication. And the Identity Authentication Service provides quite some sophisticated configuration capabilities as well as protocols that may be used in order to request a second factor from the respective user. So the demo scenario will be, I have an application user accessing SuccessFactors and I want to enforce a second factor in the Identity Authentication Service. So for that, I'm going to change the authentication behavior for the SuccessFactors system. And now we have to, let me make that a little bit bigger. Now we have to change and adjust the so-called risk-based authentication. That's a configuration where I can enforce based on rules whether users have to provide a fine to access with a first factor only, maybe username and password, or here I have configured a rule, and we have a look at that in detail, that for the users of the group HR manager, those users have to provide a second factor, and this second factor might be time-based one-time password tokens. That's a 6-digit code that you have to generate, or a so-called web authentication secret, for instance, anything that is supported via Windows Hello, like fingerprint authentication, or that might be YubiKey with a hardware token. So there are quite some options possible in order to enforce stronger means of authentication. And let's briefly check a particular demo user. It must be assigned to the group of HR manager, and I've prepared such a user. So let's have a look at the SF admin user. Anya Singh, that's our default SuccessFactors administrator. If I look at the groups that Anya has, so she is assigned to the group of HR manager, and I should be able to access the SuccessFactors instance only in case I provide a second factor for her. So I'm going to terminate the session. I think I close the browser again so that we don't have any sessions remaining. And let's go back and try to access the SuccessFactors system with Anya's user. Here is the demo system. Her logon alias is SF admin. And now I'm not forwarded to the application. Instead, I have to provide a second factor. And since here a choice was configured, one of the choices is web authentication. And I'm going to do that with my fingerprint. Okay. Well, not Anya's, but just did for the demo, of course, my fingerprint that we have here registered. And now I'm able to access the SuccessFactors instance with strong protection, which is for critical business systems a very important capability that we're providing with BTP, with the identity services, so that you always have the choice to protect the access to the application based on your needs. That was actually the third demo. Now, the final demo was, as Ceci mentioned, what we're also making sure that the identity lifecycle is guaranteed. So now we want to have a look and create a user in SuccessFactors, and with the identity provisioning service, provision the user to the identity authentication service, and it would be possible then to spread that user also in the landscape. So we briefly have a check back in the users here, so that just checking that there's no John user. I'm going to create a user John, except for John Miller, but not the John that I'm going to create now. So he's not in here. Now I have prepared, actually, because it takes quite some time in order to create a user in SuccessFactors Manage Pending Hires. And then we should be able to very quickly finalize a new hire. Here we go. And I've prepared a few drafts. I should be able to select one and then in a second or two.
It always seems longer when you're waiting for the little
yeah, exactly.
loading screen to finish.
The demo. It actually depends. I cannot say that it's always our demo landscape is slow. When I did a prep on last week, it was really fast. So astonishing that it takes so long in order to request the pending hires. Because it was not always the case like this. I was quite confident with a demo that the performance. Often you have a demo environment which is quite slow, and that makes you a little bit nervous. Oh, here we go. Otherwise, we would have need to watch a film. I recorded a demo last week, but that would be very unfortunate. I like these live demos, and things like that then happen. Although it's not really common. Okay, but here we go. So I prepared a few Johns here to be able to select one, a digital expert who is hired in the United Kingdom, in London. So we add a new employee, and usually in SuccessFactors, when you add a new employee, there's quite a lot of data that you have to provide. We can scroll over here for the personal information to be provided. We have the job classification, first date. This is something that I have to provide, that he starts working actually today. Aside from that, everything's prepared. And finally, we should be able to submit the new hire. Still, there's a pay group missing. Let's go for UK. So that we UK monthly, because there I'm sure it works. And finally, we should have created now a new hire. What we can do is go already over. So this new hire should be finished in a second. What we gonna have a look at, we're going to have a look at the identity provisioning service with which I'm fetching now the user from the SuccessFactors instance. I'm briefly going to show you the source system configuration for the SuccessFactors instance. So this is the identity provisioning service, part of the Cloud Identity services, where I configure the provisioning from source system to target system. Here I've set up the trust to SuccessFactors, and I created a filter actually to fetch all the Johns. I don't want to have all the users in our demo system, but all the demo users that I created with the username in John will be provisioned when I start the provisioning run. So having a look at the job, but just to confirm that meanwhile our user should be created. So the hire will be as of today. I could watch the profile now of our demo user, John Lord, but that's fine for now. Let's briefly go into the job and have a read job for the provisioning. There shouldn't be that much going on. So the read job was with a success. We have one read, but it should be one created here. That was 26, yeah. Should have one user created. Yeah, that's the only one.
I think in the SuccessFactors it said 23rd for some reason. So the 23rd of July. Can that be?
Yeah, that was the hiring date. I prepared that user on
the 23rd. Okay, perfect.
On the 23rd. So that should be fine. And we have that user created here. Let's briefly have a look at the administration console. But according to the protocol, the user should not be in here because it didn't create one. It should be one. No, it's not in there. If I create a resync, hopefully not too many users will be coming. Let's force another resync and check the status. Resync, we have just one updated, and that's it. But it was IAS-US. Oh, sorry. I think that I took the wrong. Here we go. having a resync now. So this is the source system for SuccessFactors. Let me briefly check the latest one, and we now have 3 rights. Probably now we have several users that were taken over, because I played a little bit around as a preparation. We should have some Johns now coming up to ensure that, okay, here we go. All the Johns that I created as part of the preparation. I don't know why it failed now in the first run. So you see, and this is actually how the identity services help with as kind of BTP foundation service, help in the integration of for the intelligent enterprise here, so that we cannot only fetch users, but of course provision to other systems and ensure that the life cycle of employees, whenever a user, for instance, leaves a company, so we can also ensure that the user record gets terminated. So this is in principle how it works, and how the identity services help with the integration scenarios that we are offering, or that are required for the integration of the various SAP cloud solutions. Yeah. Actually, that was it, part of the demo with, well, one, but at least we got it working at the very end.
And it's real life, so that's good.
Exactly. That's not having a firmware, everything works fine, but that's how it sometimes works, and you need to figure out what's going wrong, but usually then you detect it and you can ensure that it works. Okay, that was it from my side.
So, okay, awesome. Thank you, Marco. So while we give our audience time to submit their questions in the Q&A panel, I just want to kind of also look back on what you said of how the cloud identity services really support the intelligent enterprise strategy. So we saw, for example, that a customer may have various systems, because again, one end-to-end business process is not just about having one system or one cloud application, but it's really about having 2 or various systems that run across. So we saw that with SuccessFactors, we saw that with S4. We also show how really BTP is kind of the glue that syncs everything together, because the capabilities provided by BTP, in this case, the authentication and provisioning services, really help really help our customers be able to connect those various that end-to-end business process and be able to complete the tasks that they need to make sure that they run appropriately. Now, another important aspect that I really wanted to mention is how BTP is also open. Like you showed, it's not just about using maybe our identity authentication services, but we're also open. A customer can have Microsoft. I think you showed the Azure AD, so the Active Directory from Microsoft. So that's also a very important thing to keep in mind, because again, BTP is or cloud technology is really about open and being open and applying to open standards, and usually using the best of both worlds and the best of both breeds. So at SAP, of course, we have the business know-how, we understand business processes, we can provide various capabilities out of the box with S4HANA, but for everything that's on top, we provide BTP. And BTP can be used in combination with hyperscaler services, or hyperscaler solutions in this case as well. So that was a very complete and very interesting demo, so thank you for that. All right, so again, like I said, it's time for questions from the audience. So remember, you can submit your questions directly through the Q&A tool. And we'll have our experts here to kind of handle those questions on the spot. I'm just checking to see if we have any questions that came in right now. All right. So I don't see any open questions now, but please don't be shy. Go ahead, ask your questions. Our experts are here to go through them. So again, any questions on the Activate methodology, any questions on the discovery phase, the discovery process, how you can get started. Of course, there's a lot of information on sap.com. If you just search for Rise with SAP, everything will come up. Anne-Marie showed the roadmap information as well. So you have the roadmap explorer. You have, of course, on Business Technology Platform, there's a lot of information on the community. We have a Business Technology Platform topic page that kind of covers everything, but there's also a specific page for cloud identity services, for example. So if you're very interested in identity authentication or identity provision or just the services in general that we provide, you can check that out for tutorials and kind of more information of how you can get started with that as well. All right. So maybe Anne-Marie, Marco, do you guys have any closing words that you wanna share with the audience?
Well, from my side, there's one thing that I really want to confirm what you mentioned. So what we are really leveraging is open standards. That tremendously helps in the integration scenarios. We've seen that with many customers, with many projects. When we are in integration talks with the applications, it's always a question, do you support open standards for identity lifecycle management? Is there a way for you could expose a SCIM API that would help integration scenarios? If not, the identity provisioning service is able to convert protocols. So in case someone has a SCIM compliant identity provider and our applications sometimes do expose a proprietary API, then this is something that we can convert. And when it comes to single sign-on, we really made extremely good experience with setting on the SAML standard. We are extending at the moment several applications relying on OpenID Connect. So we are also open in the industry. We see what is evolving, what are the pros and cons, in which directions are we heading. So open standards is really a key for us in the integration scenarios that we want to provide with the B2P services that we have.
Perfect. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just kind of as a reminder for the audience as well, we do have the What's New viewer, for example, on the help portal, and that's where we share all these updates and all these new features that we're adding to our services. So I remember when the multi-factor authentication came up, that was a very important announcement, a very important innovation, and that was available there. So remember to check out the what's new, let's say the release notes section on the help portal to find out exactly what's being released. And of course, we have our individual roadmaps on roadmaps.sap.com that also share all the innovations that are planned for the various quarters. All right.
Maybe CC from my side, what I just want to stress, so when we look at the cloud systems, please use the SAP Activate roadmaps for your deployment. It is a little bit different because you go from, if you look at public cloud, if you look at the functionality that needs to be deployed, you are going from where previously in on-prem we used to ask, what do you want? We now have the best practice are configured. And the methodology is different. We have to go into the phase of saying, this is the current process that's configured already on the public cloud. And how can we change your business process? So please use this SAP Activate methodology. It is really, really great. The amount of accelerators and content in there. And the other point is go back and go and ask in your discovery phase, what was discussed. If you maybe were not part of those pre-sales kind of workshops, go and ask, go into the tool and get access to your scope items and go and have a look at it. So get the bigger picture of the project as well. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's a great point. And yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning we mentioned how any implementation or a new journey or a transformation to SAP S/4HANA can be a little bit overwhelming because there are a lot of things that you need to consider. But following the Activate methodology gives you a plan, gives you steps that can really help you through that journey and understand what you need to complete in each step before you move on to the next. So that's a very great point, Anna Marie. Thank you. All right. So just to close off this call, remember you can reach out to us through the SAP community using the tags that I mentioned before, like SAP Business Technology Platform, SAP S/4HANA Cloud, SAP Cloud Identity Services, SAP Extension Suite, SAP Integration Suite, everything that's related to the capabilities on the platform. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions that might come up afterwards. And thank you very much for your time today, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you very much, and the recording will be available on the SAP Community Calls page. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.